Hello, my name is LaTrisha Williams, and I will be sharing my faith story in 3 chapters from a relational Christian perspective. I cannot remember when I didn't know who Jesus was. I grew up in a Christian home. My mother sang she took me to church every Sunday and she sang in the choir. Two of my uncles were church deacons. And even though in the early part of my childhood, my dad did not attend church regularly, eventually he found his own personal relationship with Christ and he also began to go to church regularly. Church and God have always been a part of my life. I confessed Jesus as my Lord and Savior at the tender age of 8. I was a junior usher and sang in the youth choir. At the age of 13, I began to play for our youth choir, which eventually led to my becoming the main musician for the church as a teenager. As a teenager, I felt very close to God. I prayed and read my Bible regularly. And although I believe that God called me to preach when I was just a teenager, decades passed before I finally realized and accepted my call to preach. When did I affirm the faith for myself? As I mentioned, I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior at the age of 8. My parents did not force me into this decision. It was a choice that I consciously made even though I was a child. There was never a period in my life where I turned away from God, but there was a dark time in my life when I felt so far away from Him. I was in a failing marriage with an abusive husband. I was still trying to live right. I was active in church and ensured that my kids were too. On the outside, I was a faithful church girl, but there was a point when it seemed I went back and forth between begging God to help me and to deliver me and feeling too unworthy even to pray. The storm that had been brewing for years came to a climatic end and took my marriage with it. My daughter left in an ambulance and my husband left in a police car. I was suddenly a single mother of 4. And yet, through all of that chaos, God was there. He kept me and He restored me. And this experience deepened my relationship with Christ. My life since affirming my faith, my life since that thing that I just described, my life since then has changed. I've been serving in ministry for most of my life. But once I was out of that situation, I could hear God's voice again. 5 years ago, I accepted the call to preach, and my life has still not been perfect. I still go through ups and downs. I've weathered other storms. I still have a lot of room to grow. But through it all, I have learned to trust God. I know that He has never failed me, and I desire to live a life that pleases Him.